Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk for a bit about NBA All-Star Saturday night. It's the most action-packed night in terms of events across All-Star Weekend. On Sunday, you've of course got the main event, the All-Star Game itself, which for the past few years has been kind of a disaster. A lot of people said last year's was the worst All-Star Game ever, and if you have that opinion, I don't blame you. It wasn't a lot of fun. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown going at each other for a little bit was fun until it kind of turned into an entire 1v1. Nobody was really trying, even down the stretch of the game. It just felt like kind of a waste of time overall and not a lot of effort into it. Really feels like we haven't had a great All-Star Game since 2020. That was the one where you had like the blue and red jerseys, the I think first year of the Elam Mending, if not the first year, one of the first years. You had Kyle Lowry taking charges down the stretch of the game, guys playing lockdown defense, really having to work for buckets. It was a lot of fun. So hopefully we kind of get back to that here in 2024. They got rid of the Elam Mending, I believe, and I know they got rid of the draft, which I'm kind of disappointed in. I like the draft aspect of things, but anyways, that's on Sunday. And then before Saturday, we have the Rising Stars Challenge, which is one of my favorite events. It's cool to see the best up-and-coming young players go up against each other, and you get a lot of really fun moments, like when Benedict Mathurin told Jaden Ivey that he couldn't guard him, and he couldn't. Mathurin went out there and scored 18 out of his team's 40 points in the first game, ended up winning MVP, and in the first game alone, he airballed a dunk, which I didn't even know that was possible, went berserk, hitting the game winner, and also lost a $25,000 bet to Paolo Banchero live on TV at the free throw line when he said he was going to ice the game, hitting both free throws, and he went ahead and bricked both. So Rising Stars game is a lot of fun. You also had like the G League team upsetting the team that had Wemby on as the heavy favorites. Of course, for me as a Thunder fan, you know, some cool moments between Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, J-Dub hitting the eventual game winner to seal it for his team. It was overall a good time, and I feel like most people share that opinion. I know some people don't love the format of it and rather it's just a full-on game, but I don't know. I think it's fun to shake it up. And then we've got Saturday night, which has been a subject of a lot of scrutiny over the past few years, particularly in terms of the dunk contest, but I want to go through everything that happened this Saturday night, talk about my opinions on it, and where maybe they could go ahead and make some changes. Kicking things off as usual was the skills challenge, which I thought was pretty fun. They are sticking with this 3 teams of 3 type format that they've had for the past few years, where you have 3 sections, one where it's like an obstacle course, then the passing, and then the shooting. And if it's tied at the end of that, you go to a half-court shot contest, which it was tied at the end between the Pacers guys and Tyrese Maxey, Scotty Barnes, and Trae Young, the team of All-Stars. Team of All-Stars went first for the half-court shooting, could not buy a half-court shot for the first minute. Scotty Barnes even at one point tried to shoot it backwards to just see what would happen. While we're on the topic of Scotty Barnes, he's been having a rough time in skills challenges over his career as a rookie. He was like out there airballing floaters, and tonight he dribbled the ball off his own foot at the beginning of the contest, which was kind of hilarious. But anyways, they don't make it for a while. The Pacers come in there, eventually hit one. Tyrese Halliburton hits it in like 30 or 40 seconds. So the Pacers guys go on to win. The hometown crowd goes home happy. You also had the #1 overall pick squad, which they weren't trying that much. Specifically, Anthony Edwards did not really seem to care about this at the beginning. Going into All-Star practice, he was telling everybody, including his head coach Chris Finch, I'm going to shoot lefty for the whole weekend. And he did shoot lefty at the beginning in the obstacle course challenge, where he gets the corner 3, he shoots it lefty, and hits the side of the backboard like 3 times, which fortunately has given us an all-time meme for NBA Twitter to use, but some people were mad about it. I know Reggie Miller was on the broadcast. It's nothing too serious. I thought the skills challenge was fun. Of course, they've also got the LED court going on, which I think is cool. It was a little bit too chaotic, I feel like, at times, so maybe tone it down a little bit, but for these fun events, I definitely don't mind it at all. Then we had my favorite event, which is the 3-point contest. To me, this has become the premier event of All-Star Saturday. It was amazing. You had a bunch of great shooters out there, and there was no dud performances. Sometimes dud performances are kind of fun, but in this one, everybody was on their A game. I think the lowest score was Malik Beasley, who had 20. The fact that that's the lowest score is wild. At the end of it, too, first round, we had 4 guys all tied at 26 with Dame, Trae Young, Karl Anthony Towns, and Tyrese Halliburton. So they went to a tiebreaker, had 30 seconds. Halliburton ends up just barely losing. Karl Anthony Towns, there was like, I guess, a controversy, if you want to call it that, where it seemed like his foot was on the line for a couple of his shots. So some people were mad about that on Twitter, but even if you didn't count the shots that I think his foot was on the line for, he still would have won. So go to the final. It's Cat, it's Trae, it's Dame. Cat and Trae go first, and then Damian Lillard, who's really been struggling this season, particularly from 3, goes out there and on the final rack, really I think only needed to hit 1, if I remember correctly, to get the win, bricks the first 4, and then hits the final one to go ahead and give himself the W in typical Dame clutch fashion. And Dame repeats. I think they said it's the first time since 2007, 2008 that someone has repeated in the 3-point contest, but it was a lot of fun. fun. I mean, the shooting talent in the league has never been better. You've got guards doing it. You have big men. I wanted to see Isaiah Joe. I gotta say, as a biased Thunder fan, I hope he gets in there eventually, but it was a really good time. And following that up, you had another great three-point contest, and maybe the highlight of the night with the Sabrina versus Steph shootout. It was definitely the most talked about event of the night. The atmosphere was electric. Everybody was into it, and the two of them put on a show. Sabrina went out there and dominated from the get-go. I think hitting her first 6 shots in a row and ending up with 26 points, which tied the highest amount by anybody either in the shootout or the actual three-point contest. Up to that point, she was amazing. And then Steph does come along and did typical Steph stuff and did win. But it took until the final few balls of his money ball rack to get the W, ending up with 29 points and beating her by just 3. It was really close and a lot of fun. Again, like I said, everybody was talking about, the atmosphere was electric. It was super fun to watch, and hopefully they bring it back next year, which it does sound like they're planning to. Him and Sabrina were doing a little bit of a press conference afterwards. They were talking about how much fun it was, how they want to continue this thing going if they can, but how they still want to change it up. And they both talked about maybe having partners. Maybe Steph brings in Clay next year in San Francisco, and Sabrina, someone asked her about maybe like Caitlin Clark getting involved, who's currently killing it out there at Iowa, just broke the all-time women's college basketball scoring record with a three-point shot from the logo pulling up in transition, which is ridiculous. It would be amazing to see this continue to be a trend, because out of everything, this was my favorite event of the entire night. So going into the dunk contest, I feel like we had been having a really fun All-Star Saturday night. The skills challenge wasn't anything too crazy, but I feel like it was fun. The three-point contest was amazing. Shout out to Dame for repeating. And then Sabrina versus Steph was probably the highlight of the night. But the dunk contest wasn't phenomenal, and it's been like that for the past few years. Last year's, it was kind of fun. You know, Mac McClung was amazing coming in as a G Leaguer and grabbing a win, a name that not a lot of people knew of, really went out there and shocked the world. And this year, he was back alongside Jaylen Brown, the first time that an All-Star was participating since, I believe, 2019. You also had Jacob Toppin, who's of course the brother of Obi Toppin, who's won it before, and he's a high flyer, and Jaime Hawkins, who has underrated bounce and has some of the craziest dunks I've ever seen going back to a dunk contest. I think he did back in high school. So I went into it optimistic and excited, but unfortunately wasn't a great dunk contest. Mac McClung put on a show, did end up winning, going back to back. Probably my favorite dunk of the night was when, I think it was his first dunk, he went up and kind of like grabbed the ball, let go of it, and grabbed it again midair, and then put it back up and in behind his head. That was really fun. It was creative. I don't think I've seen anything like that, at least not for a long time. So that was pretty cool. But I feel like a lot of the dunks were just kind of missing that it factor. Like, a lot of guys were trying to jump over Shaq, and that has happened a lot over the past few years. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised nobody tried to jump over Wemby. With him now in the league, I felt like that would have been something somebody tried. Maybe they asked him, and Greg Popovich is like, no, absolutely not. Or Wemby's like, nah, I'm good. But I do think we see that at some point. Anyways, a lot of guys trying to jump over Shaq. Jaylen Brown was in there. Didn't have the best performance. He did end up going to the finals and almost won, which felt crazy to me. I don't think his dunks were really anything special. One of his dunks was jumping over Kai Cenat, who's a streamer, but he's like 5'2", 5'3", and he sat him down in a chair. So he was even smaller than that, and he jumped over him and kind of pretended like he had his eyes closed, but in the replay, he had his eyes open. I don't know. It was weird. So I don't think he had the best performance out there. Like, Jacob Toppin had an amazing dunk at one point, kind of like a 360 type thing, but the judges didn't really seem to care. And I think that was one of the main problems too with this dunk contest. The judges were bad. Like, they were really harshly penalizing guys for missing a single dunk, even when the dunk was still really creative and they still threw it down with a lot of force, a lot of finesse. They just were really inconsistent all over the place, it felt like, with their ranking. So wasn't the best panel of judges. Also, the commentary was extremely negative. I felt like even when we saw some amazing dunks, like with the Jacob Toppin one, the commentary was just kind of like, yeah, okay, I guess, like, that's fine. But we've seen better dunks before. Instead of, trying to hype it up, get the crowd involved, get the viewer excited about it, it felt like they were just kind of negative. And that was kind of the vibe all night, I felt like, through the commentary, which doesn't really make sense to me. I feel like you should be trying to build things up. Like, at one point, they were talking about Lauri Markkanen. I think it was Reggie Miller, maybe Kenny Smith, but in the three-point contest, he's mid-shooting, and someone's like, yeah, I don't think he can be a championship one option, which to me is kind of crazy to say about a guy right now in the midst of a three-point contest. So I think the commentary kind of dragged things down. I think the judges were inconsistent. There wasn't a lot of creativity in the dunks. And overall, I think a lot of people would agree that the dunk contest just feels kind of stale right now. I've seen a lot of people say that this is because of the lack of star power in the dunk contest, which I definitely don't agree with. Shout out to Jaylen Brown. It was cool to see an all-star participate in this thing. And sure, I'd like to see like LeBron do it at one point, or Zion, or John Morant, and it would definitely get kind of the crowd more involved. Maybe it builds a bit more hype. But I don't think any of them are going to do better dunks than a lot of these other guys can. Like, I think Mac McClung, Jacob Toppin, guys like that, even G Leaguers can do some pretty amazing dunks despite them not having the name recognition. Like, you talk about maybe the best dunk contest of all time, the best one we've had in a long time in Zach LaVine versus Aaron Gordon back in 2016. Neither one of them were stars at that point. They were both lottery picks, sure, but they were trying to make a name for themselves. Neither one of them had been an all-star or anything like that. Eventually, they became big names because of eventual their own play, but also that dunk contest. But in the moment, neither one of them were big-name stars, so I don't think that's the problem. I just think that it's hard to come up with creative dunks at this point. Almost everything has been done. You go back to like the Jordan and Vince Carter days, a lot of the dunks that they did there, guys have done now a million times, so it's not really exciting anymore, and it's reached a point where you could see the most absurd stuff, and it's like, okay, cool, but we've seen that before. Even though it's ridiculous, it's just that we've become kind of normalized to it, I think. Now, unlike some people, I don't think the NBA needs to go ahead and get rid of the dunk contest, because when we get a good one, it's extremely special, and I think eventually we will. It's just going to take some time. Guys have to come up with new ideas. Maybe the NBA restructures it a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised after the way this one went if they tried something different, which could maybe breathe some life into it. Maybe Jaylen Brown participating, gets more big names involved, which some people seem to believe will go ahead and save it. I don't know if it will. And I do think there are still some amazing athletes that could participate. Like, for example, imagine if we get like Amon or Asar Thompson, or maybe even both of them, get both the Thompson twins in this thing, and I guarantee people are going to care way more about it because those two guys are absolutely special athletes. So I think the dunk contest eventually will be fine, although right now it's definitely in a rut. And to be honest, I think the three-point contest is just the better event at this point. To me, that should be the one that goes ahead and wraps up next year's NBA All-Star Weekend, because this year, like I said, I think the Saturday night was really fun overall. Everything else was great. The dunk contest just kind of laid a dud, which it has for a lot of the past few years, and I think that's kind of left a bad taste in people's mouths. Like, imagine if we had the dunk contest in the middle, then the three-point contest, then the Sabrina Steph Shootout. If we ended on that, I think people would have a way better perception of how this night went. Instead, I'm seeing a lot of people say that it was really disappointing, which I really don't think was the case. It's just kind of the effect of the dunk contest going last. I do think the NBA should consider adding some new events to keep things fresh. Like, why do we not have a 1v1 tournament yet? If you gave players a big cash prize, like $1 million or something like that at the end of a 1v1 tournament, I feel like a lot of guys would be interested to participate. Give them like a 3-dribble limit or something like that, and just let them go ahead and cook, like first to 3 or first to 5 or something like that. Make it a 16-player tournament bracket. Whoever ends up winning is crowned 1v1 champion, king of the court or whatever. That would be really fun. Imagine all the crazy matchups you could see, like big men going up against guards, some of the best scorers in the world, just seeing them in that 1v1 format. I think it would be a lot of fun. I don't know why the NBA hasn't done that yet. I know Jalen Williams, when he was asked about other events we could see at All-Star Weekend in his media availability, talked about a 1v1 tournament, and hey, I know me and many other NBA fans would be all over it. I also feel like they should consider adding a horse game. I know they did that at one point in All-Star Weekend. They did it also over the course of the pandemic, which was not great. It was all over Zoom. But if you did it in like the arena, I think it would be a lot of fun. Like, we saw some crazy shots from these stars over the past few days, whether it was an All-Star practice or you had like Steph Curry hitting a full court shot from the opposite tunnel with one hand the other night before the Warriors game. Luka Doncic was shooting like bounce shots from forever away. You had him shooting like 50-foot high arcing threes from half court. Nikola Jokic was out there doing some crazy stuff. Guys were knocking down half court shots. Trae Young hit a shot from inside the crowd. Like, these guys can do some crazy stuff. Why have we not yet done a big like horse game? Have like 10 guys out there. Maybe you make it pig because that might take too long, but have guys out there just hitting crazy absurd shots and let that run for an hour. I feel like everybody would really enjoy that. So those are two things I think would be really interesting if the NBA wanted to go ahead and spice things up, and whether it's, you know, replace the dunk contest for a year, which again, I'm not really about. But even if they just want to add one more event to this, whether it's on Saturday night, Friday, or Sunday, or something like that, just some ideas. But overall, I do think this All-Star Saturday night was a success. It was a lot of fun. Again, the Sabrina Steph thing was amazing. I'm glad they're talking about continuing it forward to next year, and hopefully it goes beyond. We've just got to figure out this dunk contest problem. To me, that is the big problem with these events. I think they need to move it away from being the last one because it keeps leaving a bad taste in people's mouths, and they've got to innovate in some way, whether it's changing up the format, getting in guys who are a bit more innovative and creative, definitely changing up the judges because they were not good tonight. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see what they do, but hopefully there's some way to save the dunk contest. For the moment, though, I feel like everything else is going pretty well. Now we just got to keep our fingers crossed that the All-Star game this year is way better than last year's, which again, a lot of people say was maybe the worst one of all time. But I guess we'll go ahead and wait and see. But yeah, I appreciate y'all watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what you would do to NBA All-Star Saturday night if you could make some changes, particularly to the dunk contest. What are the changes you would make to try and reinvigorate it a little bit? I appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so y'all don't miss out on future videos. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say back.